that. Apparently, they had a tremendous deal from. They had like a tremendous deal from the people that make League of Legends because League of Legends, in their infinite wisdom, they assumed that Arcane would boost the sales for League of Legends and like cosmetics and stuff. Wrong, because the people who play League of Legends know that the game is like extremely toxic, so they warned people who watched Arcane away from joining League of Legends.
Did not get new players.
No, it didn't. It really did not. Hello, and welcome back to the As I Understand It podcast. This is the work-life podcast about careers, adulthood, and the evolving world we live in. Each episode will ask 3 different questions, with 2 of them relating to the work and the lives of our guests. We'll discuss the facts, we'll give our perspectives, and maybe leave with more questions than we originally came in with. So I'm your host, Cameron Geddes.
And I'm your co-host, Graham Nesbitt.
And today on the podcast, we're going to welcome back Katie Trost, as well as Sheryl Ramesh, who we haven't seen since season 1, so first time back on season 2. Before we get started with our topics, we'll talk a little bit about ourselves, so I'll introduce myself first. My name is Cameron Geddes. I'm 25. I graduated from Hope College in 2021 with degrees in economics and global studies. Right now I work as a retail sales analyst with the Kraft Heinz company, and I live in Oak Creek, Wisconsin with my girlfriend. So in my free time, I'm typically found playing games and weightlifting, and right now playing lots of Marvel Rivals, which I'm trying to get Graham to download. It's so
It
good.
will happen. It will
It's
happen.
gotta. It's so good.
It simply must.
It's simply must.
My name is Graham Nesbitt. I'm 26 years old, graduated with a bachelor's in psychology. I currently work as an addictions counselor in the Rockford region, and in my free time, I study Russian on Duolingo. Enjoy it very much.
Very nice. You got a lot of languages you're working on in there.
I do. That I do.
Is the term for that polyglot? I think so.
Maybe. I
Maybe.
almost got English down, so we'll keep going.
Nice. Katie, would you like to go? Would you like to go first? Well, go third, I guess.
Sure. I'm Kate Trost. I graduated from Hope College with a major in business in 2022, and I am a small business marketer.
Nice. Thanks, Katie. And where are you located?
I'm located in Grosse Pointe, right outside Detroit in Michigan.
Gotcha. Thanks, Katie. And then Sheryl, if you want to round us out here.
My name is Sheryl. I am 23 years old, and I am a recent Hope College graduate with a degree in biomedical engineering with a mechanical concentration and a minor in mathematics. I live in the Detroit area of Michigan, and in my free time, I can be found reading books and going to the gym.
Gotcha. Thanks, Sheryl. So I didn't realize you're in Detroit still. So do you and Katie hang out together at all? Because Grosse Pointe is very close to Detroit, isn't it?
We've gotten together once this fall. I had a pumpkin carving party for our age group, and she was one of like the 18 attendees who came. We got to catch up, which is really nice. And then I was hoping to catch up again in January or February, like go over there and grab lunch or something, so we'll have to coordinate.
Yeah. Katie always throws these big old get-togethers, and they're super fun. So thanks everyone. So I think without further ado, we'll get into our first topic of the day, which is what is a valuable skill for a biomechanical engineer to hone? So this is primarily going to be for Sheryl, and we can kind of play off that. So according to mymajors.com, which is a college major assessment site, biomechanical engineers can benefit from the following traits, which are critical thinking, reading comprehension, active listening, complex problem solving, judgment and decision making, science, and math. So, Sheryl, you want to talk a little bit about what was helpful for you and give some idea on that?
Yeah, so far what you've said about the following traits, I definitely agree on. I definitely think that there are more of like some soft skills that you can hone in. As for like my answer to like what is a valuable skill for a biomechanical engineer to hone. It's a bit more technical, but basically I would say that that it would be great to hone in your MATLAB skills. And MATLAB is a high-level programming language that is specifically designed for engineers and scientists. What you could do in MATLAB is you could do matrix manipulations. You could also collect data and graph data. And I would say that that would be a very valuable skill, because this is very frequently done by engineers, and especially if you're going to be going into a research field for biomechanical engineering, you'll also have to use MATLAB to transfer whatever data that you collected from your research, and you'll have to organize that data and plot that data. And most of the graphs that you'll see in some research papers that are done by biomechanical engineers or by biomechanists, a lot of those graphs are done by using MATLAB. And I would also definitely recommend that you try to master it on your own time. And I also understand that MATLAB may not be accessible to everyone, because or it might only be available for certain institutions. Another programming language that I would also recommend that you learn would be Arduino. And Arduino is actually a microcontroller, and a microcontroller is a small computer that is integrated on a circuit, and it basically governs a specific function that it's supposed to do. And these Arduino microcontrollers can be used for setting up circuits for sensors to be used, because some of these sensors also would be used to collect your data from.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's good info. Thanks for Cheryl. I had totally forgotten that how important MATLAB is, and I think Matthew Dickerson had mentioned that at one point actually. So yeah, I mean I don't have a ton to add on this particular subject. I'll just say that in every career you go into, there's probably going to be very specialized tools and software. So for example, when I was in econ, they had a very specialized software called Stata, which is for statistical analysis and regression, and that actually involved a bit of programming as well. That's probably the only programming I really did in college, but I thought it was super cool, and it was a good introduction to working with computers in that way. So yeah, and I think Arduinos are really cool. I've seen those. I think I used one in high school for a mini project, but yeah, very interesting and fun to work with. Do you do any sort of soldering or working with circuit boards and things like that, Cheryl?
Yes, I have done that before.
Cool. Yeah, I only mentioned that because I had worked on, I had tried to, this summer I tried to fix one of my PlayStation controllers had stick drift, which is you can't, well, you can sort of fix it without soldering it, but the only permanent replacement is um, you have to replace this part on the circuit board. It's not the accelerometer. It's the joystick cube, and it has potentiometers in it, is what those are. So you have to either replace that piece of it, or you have to get a whole new Hall effect joystick cube. So I had to learn to solder to do that, which was really annoying because it's you need to buy a bunch of protective gear and make sure you don't accidentally give yourself lead poisoning. But it's fine as long as you don't work with lead-based solder. So I just thought that was interesting.
I also have a question, if I may ask.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned the programming language, it was the
Stata, yeah.
Stata. Would you say that it is similar to I think this is like also kind of a programming language, but when I was doing intermediate statistics, I worked with this programming language called R. Would you say it's like similar to that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that R is I know that R is really useful for humanities actually. So like I was in like a one semester humanities course, and it was because we got double we got like double credit for the humanities and something else that I needed, so that's why I took it. And it was fine. It was pretty fun, but R I know R is like really helpful for the humanities, and um I think it is pretty it's also used for statistical analysis. I looked it up because I couldn't remember what R is really for, but Stata I think is more all in one. Like Stata, I think you have to like have the Stata platform in order to use it versus R I think is more open source, I think. So, um yeah, I don't know that I wouldn't remember the nuances of it super well, but Stata was like more preferred for econ work because it was for like use case testing and for stuff like that. So it's kind of boring. I won't get too much into it, but yeah. Graham, Katie, any thoughts? I know this is kind of a very niche
I
subject.
I do, actually. So this actually relates more to, I would say, engineers in general, and I want to specify I don't see this communication difference with Cheryl or with Matthew. But as from a marketer perspective, when you're speaking with engineers, unfortunately, there are some engineers that haven't honed the soft skills. They're very good at the hard skills with analytical. When it comes to explaining why they need to do the process the way they're doing it to a marketer who has a deadline. And that's the age-old issue, is tale as old as time with engineers and marketers. Marketers are like, we have this deadline. Engineers are like, this product is not ready. It will kill people. So it's just a constant back and forth. Well, I'm thinking specifically on the car industry. Why isn't this car ready?
Oh,
And then
okay.
engineers are like, it's not ready. And the marketers are like, well, we need to be able to sell this car. And then engineers are
Mm,
like, why isn't it selling as much as you had hoped? And marketers go, well, we can't read people. So it's just a constant back and forth. And so in order to navigate that barrier, I would say more, engineers should also focus as much on soft skills as hard skills to kind of bridge that gap in terms of understanding between the two different job sets.
gotcha. Yeah, that's a good point. Graham, any thoughts before the next question?
Yeah, Cheryl, in this field, with what you've gone through thus far, what would you say has been the most challenging aspect of it?
Ooh, I would say like I think it would be probably the researching aspect, especially with like using MATLAB. I would say that like calibrating and using biomedical instrumentation, which is just some biomedical equipment, I think that one was like the fun part of it. But I think like organizing the data and like making sure that like the graphs are clean and that like for some of the graphs that there's like not so much noise,
Mm,
I would say
Hmm,
was really challenging.
gotcha. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, I can see how that would be a bit of a challenge, all things considered. All right, so moving into our next question. Let's see here. Is working in a nonprofit worth it? So here's a testimonial that's on wildapricot.com. They're a management membership software. So they have this testimony from a person who worked as an administrative coordinator, and they gave the following sort of pieces of advice slash like elements of working in a nonprofit. So they said instability as the norm, limited resources demand unlimited effort, understand salary expectations, don't assume anything about nonprofits, uh, know that not every day is meaningful, get a mentor, you'll spend more time than you think working with the board of directors, never be afraid to ask someone to work for free, and fundraising is more than the ask. So, Katie is our nonprofit experienced individual. Would you like to kick off on that? I saw the faces you were making as I was describing that. So,
Yeah, I
start
can I
wherever you
can
want.
I can touch on this. And I wish colleges had these tougher conversations with college students. The mindset is when you hear a college kid say, "Oh, I really want to work in a nonprofit." A nonprofit can be a fantastic internship and it can be a fantastic career, but you have to understand they're not going to have the budget to pay you unless they're a huge, huge nonprofit organization. They're not going to have the budget to pay you like other entry-level jobs. And unfortunately, they're one of the fields where you can get very capable people that haven't studied business and marketing. But if you're a business marketing person who has that degree and you're now working with people who are purely creatives, who don't see the 5-year plan on how to do things and how to hold themselves accountable in terms of this is what we need to be doing to grow the organization, and they can't give you more than, you know, 3 months in advance of what you should be doing. That's kind of a scary situation to be in because it doesn't look like there's necessarily growth for you as a career. And it doesn't necessarily look like the organization knows what they're doing, which means it feels like your job is always in jeopardy, especially if they're one of those nonprofits that doesn't have a big endowment or doesn't have a lot of funds on the side, and they're just growing from the start. So then your entire job, instead of being looking at the 5-year plan, is just get money now, get money now, get money now, which is very short-sighted. And if you're someone that's okay with that mindset of I'm going to be incredibly busy, I may be working 60 hours a week, but only making, 35 to 42,000 starting salary, and you might have college debt on top of that, you really have to think, is this an amazing opportunity? Or am I putting myself in more financial hurt? And so it really depends on the person entering the field and what risks they're able to take. If it looks like it's going to be an incredible opportunity under incredible mentors, then my thought is absolutely go take it. But if it looks like, okay, well, there looks like they might hire me, fantastic, and I don't know how long I want to stay here, I'd be a little apprehensive if I were that person. And so you have to be extremely mindful of where are you financially and where are you in terms of your career mindset and what kind of mentorship you want. Because also if the organization, nonprofit, they may not even have the time to give you the mentorship you need as a young employee. And that could be a confidence crusher. So I really would ask a young person to sit down and really lay out the pros and cons and see if the pros outweigh the cons before they accept a position of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I'll just get into that by saying, um, before Olivia was hired at her current place of employment, because she works for a charity therapy organization. So um, she was considering to like the ability to get student loan forgiveness because obviously it's very expensive to get the master's degree required to be a therapist. So that was one of the reasons she had looked into this particular organization and charities in general, was so that if she was with them for, a certain period of time, she could get those actually forgiven by the government. So that's one thing that I know a lot of nonprofits have the ability to leverage. But yeah, depending on what your career goals and aspirations are, like may or may not be worth it for you to stay with them for the required amount of time. So, Graham, you want to get into that?
Yeah. If you don't care about being paid, then they're a good place to work at, in my experience. Pay is not as high in those fields as compared to other ones. I work at a company where they have great other benefits. They have, the time. I love the days I work. They give you a tremendous amount of paid time off, which is fantastic. But at the cost of your salary is not going to be as high as other fields. That's just been my experience with it. It is kind of lacking in that department across many positions and with multiple people I've talked to. Definitely meaningful work, but there are going to be some drawbacks with it.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Sheryl, anything you want to add on to that?
I personally have not worked for a nonprofit, but I think like from my experience, I think that like it could depend on different majors. I think specifically if you're doing biomechanical engineering, I think most engineering firms mainly care about like if you have worked for some internships or have done like some undergraduate research. Um, but I think that like if you cannot like land an internship or are unable to like do undergraduate research, I think that like a nonprofit could be great for honing in the softer skills. And and I would also like concur with Katie that that you also have to like really consider like the finances as well as like how much time you're going to be there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think we've covered off on that, and now for the topic that I know Graham is really excited about talking about. Uh, I will ask you, what are your thoughts on the TikTok ban and so-called TikTok refugees going to Red Note, which is also called Xiaohongshu? So, a little background on that. This is from CBS News. With the U.S. government's TikTok ban set to kick in on Sunday, which is tomorrow, Americans have been flocking to an alternative social media platform, but it's another Chinese app, and experts say it could present the same, if not even more issues. There's been a surge in U.S. downloads of the Chinese-owned application Xiaohongshu, or Red Note, as many users call it. Xiaohongshu has been the most downloaded free app on Apple's App Store in the US since Tuesday. Analysis by Sensor Tower, which is a market intelligence firm, showed the platform's downloads in the US had increased 200% year on year and seen a 194% uptick since last week. So this is interesting. QR code generator, a firm that provides statistics on trends online, which I thought they just generated codes, but maybe they do more stuff, said that there had been a 4,900% increase in searches on Google for Xiaohongshu in the US on Monday alone. So I'll give a little bit of, I guess, like background and I'll just start on this. So I should look up when TikTok was introduced. Graham, was it like
It started
2018?
it started gaining I mean, technically 2014 was when the first TikTok was posted. It was Musically back then, but
That's right. Yeah.
2018 was when it really started being mainstream.
Yeah, I remember. That's right. It used to be Musically. Um, yeah, that's a good point. And what I'll just say about that is so TikTok is the US version of an app in China that's called Douyin. So, and the platforms are kind of constructed in the same way, but they're fundamentally different in terms of like what content they provide, as well as the fact that Douyin is only available in China, and I think TikTok was only available outside of China. So they were complements of each other that were separated by what's called the Great Firewall of China, i.e., not every app, in fact, almost no apps are directly accessible in China and outside of China together. So, uh, yeah, TikTok was Musically and then rebranded as TikTok as we know it. Um, Massive popularity. A lot of people like it because it was disconnected from the Western social media companies because it's run by ByteDance, which is a Chinese conglomerate inside of China. I think they technically operate out of Singapore, but they're pretty much owned and controlled by China. So that was obviously the bone of contention is the fact that like the standards and like the legal concepts that we have in the West don't necessarily apply to ByteDance. And that's a big problem if you're a US lawmaker or if you're even like a US company because it adds a lot of variability in there. And as well as there are a lot of security concerns. I'll just be honest, like I wrote a prospectus on this when I was still at Hope for I think my Asian studies minor. Basically just that China had when this was first brought in, there was some like big security concerns around sometimes the app would like take things from your clipboards, like if you've copied a given phrase or whatever, or like text, it would sometimes draw from your clipboard without notifying you. Sometimes it would uh like try to get access to more photos than what it should have had available, I think was one of the hesitations. There's also like things that would be automatically taken down on TikTok that wouldn't be taken down on other platforms. So, as well as TikTok is likely part of the larger Chinese like surveillance apparatus, essentially, without getting too political. Every tech company and hardware company inside of China basically at some end can be directly told what to do by their government, which again you could say like is true of any company around the world. Like they ever at the end of the day they have to do what they're told to do by their respective owning company and government. So anyway, so obviously all the kerfuffle in both the Trump and Biden administration for getting rid of it because security concerns is what they're saying. It could be other stuff as well. But yeah, apparently people have just thrown caution to the wind and said like, okay, if we can't do it on TikTok, we're essentially going to protest by downloading this other Chinese app that is explicitly more restrictive and explicitly more tuned into the Chinese apparatus. So that's all the context that you really should need to know going into this. But Graham, I'll let you start.
Yeah, so with the transition to Red Note, I mean, largely the general vibe on TikTok is it's a protest against the US government. They are doing that explicitly uh, as a sign that they're not happy with it. They're going to Chinese-based app. They are uninstalling Meta-based and US-based apps, Instagram, Facebook, things of that nature. In general, I am irate that it is being banned. TikTok is used by 170 million US users. It's a fantastic community that cannot be replaced. Another of the things is that it is impacting businesses. Many small businesses use TikTok to generate income. You can also make income just by creating videos, being content creators. I've made videos that have made a decent amount of revenue, and that's not going to be an option if that gets banned. My personal opinion, I don't think it's going to remain banned if it does go through, especially with recently, I know they had some development with the Supreme Court, but basically Biden's team has said that they are not going to enforce the fine that will happen upon TikTok being banned, which I think it's like 5,000 per user, and with the 170 million, it's quite a lot for that. But they're not going to enforce that, which will basically allow Trump to, take on that situation once he goes into office. So I think TikTok may be down for a couple weeks, maybe a month or two. I don't think it's going to be permanently gone. It's just my opinion of the way things are going to go. Another thing, even with the increase in going to Red Note, I personally think it's a trend. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a lasting thing. For one reason is that the censorship is real there. You cannot post the same things on Red Note that you can on TikTok. Any criticisms of the Chinese government, discussions on religion, they get taken down very promptly. So it is a much less freedom of expression app than TikTok. Would be a number
Yeah.
of the things.
Yeah, and I'll say too, like in terms of the what I anticipate the political response will be. So yeah, I agree with Graham. I don't think necessarily the wide term shift to like Red Note is going to necessarily last for a lot of reasons. One of which is that the app is basically configured to only work in Mandarin, or like you can text in other languages, but all of the interfaces and like all of the actual architecture is in Mandarin, which is, from my experience, a very difficult language to learn. And your average influencer outside of a few settings is not going to want to deal with that. Like they are not going to want to learn Mandarin to like actually, you know.
I
So in
get
a
push I
yeah.
get push notifications from Red Note. It's all in Mandarin. I'm like, cool, great. I don't know what you're saying, but awesome.
Yeah. So obviously like a bit of a hurdle there, as well as the fact this is so yeah, I think the ban will go into effect Sunday, barring some 11th hour thing from either the Trump or the Biden administration, which technically I think would have to happen in the Biden administration because Trump doesn't take office until the 20th. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I think like Graham, I think what will probably happen realistically is ByteDance or someone else will come back to the table shortly after, and there will be an agreement basically to get people off of Red Note and get them back onto TikTok, and there will be some more guardrails or like some other stuff that there will be some concessions there. Um, but I think the interesting thing is this is a very limited window in that firewall between China and the US. Now you have Chinese and American families talking to each other back and forth, and that has almost never happened at this scale. There's always been like WeChat, and there's been other apps where it is kind of theoretically possible, but the average American doesn't have good insight into what Chinese netizens are like and what their thoughts are. So obviously within the framework that China allows for their apps, I'm interested to see like what some of the fun kind of digital tourism is going to be and what those cross-cultural relationships will be like. So yeah, that's who knows? Anything, honestly, anything could happen, and I wouldn't be surprised. So, um, Katie and Cheryl, anything to add on to this? I'm not sure how big you guys are into TikTok and social
Um,
media.
well, first off, how many of us have TikTok? Sounds like Graham, you have a TikTok. I have a TikTok.
I've made
Cheryl,
one for the podcast that I almost never use.
okay. I made one because people wanted to see scroll content at college. And so that's purely what I made it for, was to upload scroll videos. That's another story, another time. Anyways, I understand the concerns with TikTok, and I was just Googling this because I couldn't remember exactly when it happened. But in 2016, spyware was found on a bunch of Samsung phones and tablets, that China had put on there. And so I look at stuff like that, and I don't think the US is above spying the way China does
No,
either.
definitely not.
And
Yeah,
like we
I'll
all
add
do,
that too.
all the
Anything
countries
that
do.
China has been accused of has almost certainly happened in some form on the US social media. So not a dig at like not trying to make a false equivalency there, like
Mhm.
make pretend that the Chinese social media is structured much differently than the US one. But anyways,
But I have to admit, I am sad, and I do hope that the camaraderie that has been made between creators doesn't end, because I'm seeing groups, like marginalized groups, like especially because a lot of the content I see is from disabled community, and how much the disabled community has been able to band together and talk about subjects and learn from each other and raise awareness and give education. The general public has been huge over these last few years. And I would hate to see groups that have found ability to give a grouped voice like that nature. I'd hate to see groups like that not have as strong a voice. Now, that being said, there's also groups that are, not that great, that are now able to have um, raised voices, and that's been unfortunate. But you can't really have one without the other. But I would
yeah.
hate to see the community that social media has created, you know, be weakened in that sense because of this TikTok ban. And much to Graham's point, I worry about the small businesses that have really benefited from TikTok, because there's tools and stuff for videos on TikTok that people have been able to utilize it, and repost to Instagram rather than paying for other services.
Yeah.
Um, and so I feel bad for the small businesses that may have to turn, paying for services that they really can't afford, because it's just such a hard thing to do to constantly, make your margins.
I want to say also that the TikTok creator tools are unmatched. They are best in the business. Like, I've tried going and making shorts on YouTube Reels or YouTube Shorts, for whatever example. The in-app content creation process is so far behind TikTok's. It cannot do the same things. It's not like you can just go straight from TikTok to that with the same
Yeah,
expectations.
the shorts that I make for this podcast, I'm able to do on desktop fairly, like not easily, but fairly well through DaVinci Resolve. But the caveat for that is I have a very powerful computer and I'm doing it stationary, and I'm allotting a significant amount of time to make those shorts. So it's not like with TikTok where you can literally just like pull out your phone, hit the little like uh the classic thing that people do where they have some news article behind them and then they're like, "Do you see this here? This means that this is like." That's probably going to be difficult to do. I'm not sure if other apps still have that capability, or like the auto captioning, or even the way that TikTok changed the music licensing on social media. I remember when TikTok first started gathering steam and people were posting reels with like pretty significant audio clips of popular songs. And I don't know what levers they had to pull to make that possible, but that's the type of stuff that YouTube would just like take that
Yeah.
down prior.
One of the things that I've always loved video editing and things of that nature. TikTok, you can use up to 60 seconds of pretty much any song. And, as long as it doesn't go over 60 seconds, you can use it on that platform. YouTube does not allow it to that degree. So
Yeah.
your creative abilities are much more limited on other platforms.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. Big changes to how it affected other apps too. So, well, I mean, again, we'll see. I'd be surprised if this is the last we hear of TikTok and have access to it, but we'll see. Any closing thoughts before I round it out?
Download all your videos. Make sure if there are creators you'd like to follow, make sure you can find them on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, and start setting up those avenues so you don't lose the people you've been trying to follow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, I think that'll probably do it for today. I want to thank my wonderful guests here for joining. So, as well as for Graham for co-hosting as usual. Always appreciated. So, that'll do it for today. Thanks for watching. Our regular cadence now should be I'm going to post some form of shorts content prior to releasing an episode. So you should be expecting a short and then an episode.
Follow us on TikTok.
Follow us on TikTok for the one remaining day that it has. For other social media, you'll be able to see those up here when I edit the video. So that's it for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in about 2 weeks. So till then, take care and have a good one. Thanks, everyone.